Hello and welcome back to BioTech IQ, everyone. This is your host, Ammon Rivera, and today we have Alon Ben-Noon, who is the CEO and co-founder of NeuroSense Therapeutics. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ammon.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on today. We got an interesting week going on in the world of ALS, or amyotrophic. Oh, let me make sure I read this right. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Some interesting statistics, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with, Alon. According to the hopkinsmedicine.org, ALS affects as many as 30,000 people in the United States, with 5,000 new cases diagnosed each year. So, of course, that's not including, worldwide, right? There's an estimate suggests that ALS is responsible for as many as 5 of every 100,000 deaths in people aged 20 or older. Now, typically, ALS does affect people that are generally over age of 60. That's the most common age group. So definitely, a massive unmet medical need here to discuss. And in addition to that, of course, as you mentioned in our brief little intro that you and I were talking before we got started recording, Amylyx Pharmaceuticals, which has an AdCom scheduled this week, is kind of experiencing some turbulence. So I think there's a lot and interesting things to talk about today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's get into it then. So let's talk briefly about your background, Alon. Tell us a little bit about, what were the driving factors that led you into this field and in the expertise that you're in?
Sure, with pleasure. So I'm an industrial engineer by training. I also have an MBA. And from the beginning, I started working in the pharmaceutical industry. I was intrigued by this industry and hoping to do something that is meaningful to assist bringing new drugs to market. I worked at Perrigo and at Teva in the innovative division there. And then I made a decision to establish a consultancy firm and to assist many small biotech companies to achieve their goals, to advance their innovative programs. And I recruited people to this consultancy firm. It was quite a successful firm, but then I happened to meet Shai Rishoni. He was an ALS patient and also the CEO of Price for Life, a nonprofit organization for ALS. And this was a life-changing meeting, by all means. At that time, I had huge plans for the consultancy firm, which was called Medican Consulting. And in terms of weeks, I made the decision that something needs to be different in the field of ALS, and I reduced significantly the activity of the consultancy firm and started working with colleagues and peers of mine, bright minds on NeuroSense Therapeutics, trying to find an effective treatment, to find and to develop an effective treatment for ALS patients. And I can tell you a lot, of course, about the meeting with Shai Rishoni. It was an inspirational meeting, and I will be glad to share some of the moments, the precious moments I shared with Shai.
Yeah, so specifically then, what was it that you mentioned it was very inspirational, and you mentioned working in the consultancy previously, so you probably worked in different therapeutic areas.
Correct.
What was it about this particular therapeutic area in dealing with ALS that was inspirational and that really drove you to go this direction completely?
So I was always interested more in the brain diseases, so CNS indications, central nervous system, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and also ALS. So of course I was very much familiar and aware of this horrible disease. But then when I met Shai, I made a decision that I'm not the direction that I took to assist companies achieving their goals is something that was great, but now perhaps I need to do something with bright colleagues of mine and create a difference for ALS patients. So when I met Shai in 2016, he was completely paralyzed. And I knew what to expect to some extent when I came to his home I was introduced by a colleague of mine to Shai. But still, when I was sitting next to him, to a person who is completely paralyzed, couldn't move a muscle in his body, just looking at me with his eyes without moving his face at all, because he couldn't at the time. He was in an advanced stage of the disease. But writing via computer software, talking to me via this computer software, I was talking back to him. I was amazed by how much he's doing for patients like him in the field to find therapies, but not only, also to advance assistive technologies. And I thought that since I know really great scientists, maybe with both hands, legs, functional body, and the ability to talk, maybe I can do something to bring a good therapy to patients like Shai. So I was talking to peers, to colleagues of mine, scientists, and we were starting looking for the right targets to tackle in this fatal disease. It was clear to us that it's not just one target. It's a very, very complex disease. From the first, when we sat on this and tried to solve this puzzle, it was clear that we need to find the most relevant mechanisms in order to create a clinical benefit for the patients. So basically, this is how it started, with us identifying first the relevant mechanisms, and then to move forward and to identify molecules that can reach these targets and create the required change. I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry, I had my mute on. I was trying to mute any background noise coming from Nasir. So, when you record live videos like this, it ends up out there on YouTube, but I think it adds to the character a little bit. So anyway, so I was saying, I hearing your discussion of how many pronounce his name as Shaya? Shaya, yeah. So I knew someone that had Lou Gehrig's disease that eventually passed away from it as well. And in the short time that I interacted with him, he wasn't completely, incapacitated yet. But just hearing your discussion of basically only his eyes were moving and he was talking via computer system. I mean, just to think what that must be like for somebody, it must be terrible. So definitely an area that I think needs to be addressed, and you're doing that. So we talked about the genesis. We talked a little bit about how you got into this. What was the inspiration? Let's talk about what NeuroSense is doing now. NeuroSense Therapeutics is based in Israel, correct?
Correct. We also have an office in Cambridge and employees in Europe, in Germany, but most of us are here in Israel, and the management, most of the management also here, functioning from Israel.
Okay. Yeah. So that makes sense. I mean, nowadays drug development is a global affair, right? It takes place globally. And so I just wanted to touch of where you're headquartered at, but obviously, with some of the things that you've got going on, you recently completed the phase 2A and are prepping for a phase 2B. I want to talk about that. But before we get to that, let's take a look at your lead asset here. I'm sharing my screen. Are you able to see that, Alon?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, perfect. So that means everyone out there in BioTech IQ land watching the video can see it as well. If you're listening on the podcast, by the way, you can go to the YouTube channel, BioTech IQ Podcast, and watch the video there. So PrimeC is the lead asset. And we'll just kind of read the first line here, and then we'll have you, Alon, kind of maybe break it down for us. But so NeuroSense, PrimeC is a novel drug. It aims to treat ALS by regulating the microRNA synthesis, reducing neuroinflammation, and influencing iron accumulation. So this is a combination of 2 FDA-approved drugs, already approved drugs, correct?
Correct. For different indications, not for ALS, approved drugs for different indications. Okay. That we combine together to one sophisticated formulation with unique doses of these compounds. And this formulation is maximizes, this is the aim of this formulation, is to maximize the synergism that we found to have between these two compounds and to work better on these several pertinent targets that were mentioned here.
Okay, perfect. I was going to ask, could you maybe break it down for us a little bit more from the science perspective in obviously sharing what you can share? So here on the website, it talks about regulating microRNA synthesis, reducing neuroinflammation, influencing iron accumulation. Specifically, how is PrimeC doing that?
Okay, so one of the compounds of PrimeC is well known to reduce iron accumulation. And we know that in motor neuron cells of ALS patients, iron is accumulated and it creates the degeneration of the cell. So obviously we need to reduce it. Also with regards to microRNAs regulation, there is an enzyme called dicer that dysfunction in motor neurons of ALS patients. This is another research that was done in the recent years that found this enzyme, and we want to enhance its activity in order to regulate microRNAs. Another aspect is, of course, neuroinflammation. Many companies in the past tried to work on neuroinflammation as one single target. We are working on it in addition to the two other targets that were mentioned, in order also in the environment of the motor neuron cells to reduce the inflammation, and by that to provide longer survival of the motor neuron. But it's not the only targets that we are aiming for. In the downstream process, we believe that we are also hitting oxidative stress and glutamate excitotoxicity. So there are several targets that we are aiming for, and we want to create a change in those targets in order to create the required clinical benefits.
Okay, so that's interesting, very interesting. So you recently completed, excuse me, the phase 2A, right? And that was focused mostly on I'm sorry. That's mostly focused on, so you were able to prove safety, a well-tolerated safety, reduce the function.
I can elaborate, of course. So
sorry, say that again.
I can elaborate obviously on the proof of concept study on the phase 2A with 50 ALS patients. And what we found in this small study that we're looking only for safety and tolerability is not only that in this study the drug was proven to be safe and well tolerated, but also we saw a reduction in the disease progression in the ALS functional rating scale and a significant reduction in the progression of the forced vital capacity. So the two major endpoints of this fatal disease, the ALS FRS and the FVC, the forced vital capacity, we saw a meaningful change there. But moreover, we also saw that we have fabulous biomarkers, fabulous changes in biomarkers that are related to the drug and related to the disease, such as TDP-43. We know that it accumulates over time in motor neurons, and it's a toxic protein when it accumulates in motor neurons. And here in this study that we dosed patients for a period of 12 months, we saw a very nice reduction, statistically significant reduction in this protein. And also in neuroinflammation, we saw statistically significant reduction in the neuroinflammation, which also we know that in naive patients that are not treated, it only goes up over time. So we were very encouraged by that, and we also were looking to find if there is any correlation between these biomarkers and the clinical outcomes. And we saw that there is a correlation between reduction in TDP-43 and reducing the disease progression. So slowing down the disease progression and lower levels of TDP-43. So we are super encouraged, and this is only from a very small study relatively. So now we are moving to the phase 2B, a double-blind, placebo-controlled multinational study. We have very high expectations. and we also going now with a superior formulation of PrimeC. So better doses and also a better formulation that we worked on while we were conducting the phase 2A study. And now the doses were determined also by the results from the phase 2A, when we understood that we can go to a different doses, which may also provide better results.
I see. So what are, going to this phase 2B, a larger study, do you foresee any potential challenges that you're looking at? So something unique to your company setup, your situation, your drug formulation that you're making sure you're keeping in mind as you prep for this?
So our main challenge is just the regular challenges that any company is facing, is the recruitment rate. So now we are spreading the word, of course, so patients will know about this study, will understand the potential benefit of this study, and will join the clinical trial. And we are very, very ambitious here when we want to recruit patients, a large number of patients in a very short time period. And this is my personal goal and the company's goal, and we intend to meet this goal, to recruit in a very short time a large number of patients, with a hope to show that we reduce the ALS-FRS significantly and reduce forced vital capacity significantly, which are the two most important endpoints, when clinical endpoints for this disease. Of course, to see that we also create the same benefit, provide the same benefit in terms of biomarkers. So we reduce the TDP-43 and reduce neuroinflammation. This is another aspect of this study.
So when are you planning, or what's the target date for this phase 2B to start? Are we looking at later this year, or are we looking at 2023?
We are looking at May this year. So 2 months from now, we intend to have the first patient in 2 months.
Yeah, just around the corner. Well, I would say you're pretty well positioned. You know, look, this is according to Crunchbase, of course, so you probably have better numbers, but at least how they have this broken down is, it looks like way back, I say way back, I mean, things move so fast nowadays. In 2020, there was some type of an equity crowdfunding round that raised about $529,000, but then in 2021, you had an IPO which raised somewhere around 12 million, and so that's pretty exciting, I think. Financially positioned to you know, good results from the phase 2A, got the approval from the FDA to move to a phase 2B. You've got you know, great results showing in the data so far, and then you've also got the financial positioning and able to move forward, get the patient recruitment going, which is obviously already happening, and that's exciting news.
It is, and I have to say that Crunchbase is not up to date. First, in 2020, we raised more than 500,000. And nowadays, we actually received additional $4 million at a share price of $6 due to warrants exercise. So we are even better positioned now. And we have a runway till Q3 2023. So we actually have this major inflection point of revealing the results from the phase 2B study before we actually need to raise more money. So now we have time to work diligently, work hard on this clinical study and on the additional assets in our pipeline. And then when we hit this major milestone, then we can move forward and raise more money in a different position at that time.
So you're looking at, you mentioned additional assets in the pipeline. So you're looking at PrimeC potentially being able to hit other indications? So
it's not PrimeC, it's Cognicy for Alzheimer's, and it's Stability for Parkinson's disease. We believe that first, we know that ALS, of course, share same mechanisms with the Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And we believe that a different composition of these two molecules, which we have a patent on, the combination itself. A different composition can create also a clinical benefit in those indications as well. So this is what we are exploring now in preclinical studies with the goal to initiate clinical trials in early 2022.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I clicked over here again on the screen. Everyone can see it, but a snapshot of the pipeline. So that's an exciting thing, being in the seat that I am. So as a professional recruiter, I work with biotech companies across different, therapeutic areas, indications, different parts of the country, world, whatever. And so, and I work with a lot of small to mid-sized biotech companies, and always looking at the pipeline, trying to understand where they're at, what phases they're in, because of course, from my side of the table as a recruiter, I help specialize in recruiting specific roles needed to accomplish whatever function: clinical development, pharmacovigilance, PV, clinical operations, as well as regulatory affairs and some other areas. But what I'm getting to is when you look at the pipeline of a lot of companies, if they've got one very specific thing that they're working on, it's kind of, that whole eggs in one basket saying. And so it's nice to see you've got other things going on. You've got a patent, you're moving forward. And so I think that establishes the company again for more of a long-term approach, right? Versus a short-term, hey, we just want to do this one thing and then see where it goes and maybe sell or license, or maybe that. So yeah, that's good to see.
Yeah.
So I wanted to move to the last question I got for you here. And that question has to do with the upcoming AdCom for Amylyx. I don't want to, they're obviously not the folks of this, you are. And I think you've got a unique positioning going on. But obviously, things are interconnected, and I'm sure you're watching what's going on with them and looking at how that could affect your company's pathway moving forward. So first off, how would that affect you if at all? So they go into this, they get positive, feedback or negative. What does it do for NeuroSense Therapeutics?
Sure. So first of all, I have to say that Amylyx is a very interesting company, and I really like Josh and Justin, who are managing the company. We're in good connections, and I appreciate them. The AdCom committee that they are facing now, there are two aspects, of course. One is if the results are very positive or positive, then it might reflect, we think that it will reflect positively on NeuroSense, because they are developing a combination therapy for ALS. They ran one relatively small clinical study with 137 patients, showed 25% effect, slowing down the disease progression. And if the AdCom will advise the FDA to approve this therapy, then it might imply on the route that NeuroSense will take in the very near future, and the possibilities to approve PrimeC as a therapy for ALS after one clinical trial that may turn into a pivotal study. This is a possibility that is out there, and we need to bear it in mind and consider it. So definitely a positive result. If the outcome will be that they are not as positive as, or will not advise the FDA not to approve the therapy, then I have to remind you and everyone who are watching, we are different. So it doesn't reflect negatively the way that we are looking at it, because we showed biomarkers that imply that PrimeC has a biological activity in ALS. So definitely the route will be more discussions with the FDA on how we can position and bring PrimeC as therapy for ALS patients as soon as possible. But we definitely will need to consult with the FDA how to do so. In any case, the question is not what will be the outcome of the AdCom, but probably what results it can bring to the company in terms of the investors that are looking at us and expecting us to bring PrimeC as soon as possible, and also the patients, obviously. And we are committed to the patients first and foremost, and the investors with our plan forward.
So, well, good. As we kind of wrap up our conversation here, I wanted to just briefly, I know you've been talking about these things, and so we know what's on the horizon very quickly here, but generally from a strategic standpoint, what's next for NeuroSense Therapeutics? Where do you see things headed? Hey everyone, real quick, don't go away. Real quick, I just wanted to say thank you for watching this video. And before we jump back into the interview, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I really appreciate it. Oh, and also go to the BioTechIQpodcast.com. That's the BioTechIQpodcast.com, where you can also listen to full audio version of different interviews that we've already done. So thank you.
Sure. So again, you mentioned, of course, the initiation of a phase 2b study in 2 months, which is probably the most important thing currently that we are focusing on. But also we are working on the 3rd stage of the biomarker study with Mass General Hospital. We expect the results to be available in June this year. We are working on a fast track with the FDA. We are working on the Alzheimer's and Parkinson's programs and advancing them to be IND ready in those programs. But we are also working to strengthen our pipeline with additional relevant assets for NeuroSense that suits us, in order to position ourselves also in the, not only in the near future, but also mid and far future, and to have a robust pipeline that we are working on and bringing new therapies to patients in need.
Okay. Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm excited to see where things go from here. And I'm glad that you and I had a chance to connect, to talk about this. Again, ALS and some of these other neurodegenerative diseases that your company's focused on obviously are just terrible in what they do to people. So good on you, to you and your team for tackling that. Thanks for coming on BioTech IQ.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.